Joining us now, Sports Illustrated senior writer Chris Mannix. Chris, let's start with the Lakers like we always seem to do, in the middle of a pretty massive road trip right now. But does any of what's happening right now matter if they get LeBron James and Anthony Davis back healthy in time for the postseason?
Yeah, I would expect over the next couple of weeks for the Lakers to sink even further in the standings than they have. Anthony Davis, according to Frank Vogel, is still a ways away from coming back. LeBron James was recently seen on Instagram in a walking boot. So we're probably talking a couple of weeks before both those guys are on the floor, which could mean the Lakers could sink to 7, 8, maybe even 9 in the Western Conference. But I just don't think that it matters all that much. I mean, LeBron James in the past, whether it's Cleveland or Miami, hasn't necessarily been reliant on home court advantage. In fact, only 1 year in his last 4 in Cleveland were the Cavaliers the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. So he's comfortable going on the road. And if LeBron and Anthony Davis are healthy, you can make the argument that they're better than any team in the Western Conference. Throw in the fact that this roster is upgraded over what it was last year. I think Dennis Schroeder is an upgrade over Rajon Rondo. Montrezl Harrell is having an excellent season coming off the bench, and they just added Andre Drummond, who replaces the toughness that this team lost in the aftermath of Dwight Howard leaving. So as long as they get into the playoffs, I really don't think it matters what seed they are.
Where is their weakness? Ben McLemore, I think, was picked up to maybe 8 in their three-point shooting. I mean, are there holes anywhere right now with the obvious exception of not having their 2 best players on the floor?
Well, I mean, everybody wants to add shooting at some point or the other, and McLemore has been a pretty good shooter, but I feel like he may be just the break glass in case of emergency guy. I wouldn't expect McLemore to be playing a significant role with the Lakers for the rest of the season. I do think they addressed perhaps their biggest weakness with Drummond. I mean, the physicality that Drummond brings is different than what Marc Gasol brings, is different than what Montrezl Harrell brings. The Lakers were the number 1 defense in the NBA with those 2 players playing the 5 spot. But Drummond can come in, be a 10-plus rebound per game guy, be a shot blocker. Even in his first game with the Lakers, when he only played 14 minutes, you could see signs early on that he was going to have an impact with this team. So I think the Lakers, when healthy, are perhaps the most complete team in the conference.
The way that LeBron James takes care of himself has been well documented. Everybody from Adam Silver on down has made a point to note how meticulous he is, how committed he is. But the walking boot with where he is right now in his career, is that not more concerning to you? I mean, every season that goes on, every year that goes on is seemingly a little bit more wear and tear, despite of, how well you manage yourself.
A little bit, I guess. But if it was a back injury or a hamstring injury or something that could potentially be nagging or be impacted by, the passage of time, I would be a little bit more concerned. But it's a high ankle sprain. It is what it is. It's going to take whatever amount of time it takes for him to come back. But I don't expect that to have a major impact. Look, every time we argue against LeBron for some reason, he just proves everybody wrong. And until LeBron James doesn't make it to the NBA Finals in a year his team makes the playoffs, I'm not going to believe it's not going to happen.
Everybody, with that in mind, exactly to your point, stacks his legacy against Michael Jordan's legacy. If he can take this team to an NBA Finals, win a championship as potentially an 8th seed, how does that factor into his legacy?
I think it would make a significant impact. LeBron has said in the past that he has won 2 of the most difficult championships in NBA history. He did it back in, 2017, when the Cavaliers came back from 3-1 against the Warriors to win the finals. That was the 72-win Warriors team, a really good team. And he did it last season in the bubble, which was the most extreme circumstances that anyone's had to win a championship in. If LeBron is able to win a championship as the number 8 seed, or even more significant, have to go through the play-in tournament, which is eligible for the 9th and 10th seeds in that conference, that would be a pretty significant feather in his cap. I mean, no number 8 seed in NBA history has ever won a championship. The closest that came to it was the Knicks back in that lockout short in 1999 season. So if LeBron's able to do it with the Lakers, on top of doing it in the bubble last year, on top of doing it when down 3-1, that's basically the championship trifecta, which has to bring him a little bit closer to Jordan in that greatest of all time debate.
Yeah, that would be incredible. Let's stay in the top tier of the Western Conference and talk about Denver a little bit. They've won 6 straight now at the time of this taping, dating back into the last week of March. How legitimate are they? And if they are in fact a legit contender, which player do you think is having the most significant impact?
Well, the trade that brought Aaron Gordon into the mix has worked as well as you could hope it could have worked. I mean, Gordon gives the Nuggets a consistent third scorer, which is something that they've been looking for most of this season. They get great production out of Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. From there, it's Michael Porter Jr., it's, insert player X, wherever you want to go. They haven't had as consistent an offensive output from that third player as they would have liked this season. Gordon can be that guy. On top of that, he is now one of their best defensive players. And when you look at the Western Conference playoff field, it's going to be incredibly important to have a sturdy 6'9", 3-4 man to defend the likes of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and LeBron James. So the Nuggets have gotten exactly the kind of bounce they were hoping for from the Gordon trade. And I think longer term, at least for this season, it makes them a significantly tougher playoff team.
It seems like it's pretty good to be a Denver fan right now. And I would imagine for Knicks fans who have suffered for, a decade plus, there have been moments that have been really exciting as well with Julius Randle's development, getting the All-Star nod. Is he, in your mind, the front runner for most improved player?
I think he is. And I think one of the competitors that voters will look at will be Zion Williamson in New Orleans. That argument kind of drives me crazy when you have, people voting for the former number 1 pick for most improved. You're supposed to improve if you're the number 1 pick. It shouldn't be, in my mind, the most improved player should be somebody that kind of comes out of nowhere and has a lot of success that you didn't really expect. It shouldn't be a very high draft pick. It's why I didn't vote for Brandon Ingram last year, who won it in New Orleans with the Pelicans. Ingram was, of course, the number 2 pick several years ago. And I think there's a natural development that happens with those guys. Julius Randle has been a good player for a number of years. He has evolved into an excellent player, an all-star player this year, putting up career best numbers in several categories. So for me, Julius Randle is a clear front runner for most improved player. This is one of those ballots where it's subjective and you just don't know how voters are going to vote.
What do you think's behind that significant jump when you have a player like Julius Randle who has been good for, a couple of seasons, and then all of a sudden they take that step that seemingly opens everybody's eyes?
Well, a lot of it's just individual hard work. I mean, to be honest, Julius Randle is now become a more consistent 3-point shooter. His field goal percentage is up. I think a lot of it too is opportunity. Randle is with the Knicks where he is the alpha on that team. He is the star on that team, the number 1 option on that team. And under Tom Thibodeau, he's playing a lot of minutes on that team. So he's getting plenty of opportunity to shine in this role as the leading man. And I think those 2 ingredients are the key factors. When
you think about the MVP discussion, James Harden was out in front by all measure. He's got this hamstring injury now. Don't really know the full extent of that. They're saying a couple of weeks. But how does that affect the MVP race? I think it affects it significantly because the MVP race, the voting seems to swing based on one injury to another. The season began with LeBron James looking like the front runner. Then LeBron has his ankle injury. At one point, Joel Embiid looked like the front runner. Giannis has inserted himself into the mix over the last couple of weeks. But I think the front runner right now with Harden out of the lineup is got to be Nikola Jokic. Jokic is having just a monster statistical season with the Denver Nuggets, coming close to averaging a triple-double for the year, which is something we haven't seen since Russell Westbrook did it. Jokic has been healthy. He has been consistent. And the Nuggets are starting to win some games. They're starting to climb up in the stands a little bit. I think if the Nuggets can get inside that top 3 and Jokic stays healthy the rest of the way and continues to put up these types of numbers, I think he is going to be the strongest candidate for the award. But this is another award where you could see people vote based on the location of the voters, where you have people in the Northeast that see a lot of Embiid who vote for him. People on the West Coast, a lot of LeBron and vote for him. The
the North vote for Giannis. I mean, there's going to be a very splintered vote this year for MVP.
So some of those other teams, Denver, Utah, or wherever, that kind of fall into those smaller markets or outside where you have that concentration of media, oftentimes get, I don't want to say the shaft, but maybe don't get as much attention paid as they should.
Yeah, I mean, especially on the West Coast, this has kind of been the argument that Damian Lillard should have deserved more consideration over the years than he's gotten for MVP, but people don't often stay up late on the East Coast to watch Portland Trailblazers games. Look, I think there's also an argument, against Giannis for voter fatigue. Guys won the last 2 MVPs, and I think there'll be people out there that think, maybe we don't need to vote for him this year. I think if you're going to be an MVP voter, you've got to look at every year in a vacuum. Who is the best season this year, been the most valuable player? And right now, that to me looks like Nikola Jokic, who has been the most consistent, the most healthy, and putting up some numbers that are just eye-popping.
All right, Chris Mannix, senior writer at Sports Illustrated. You can find everything he's writing there. Go ahead and read it. Thanks, Chris, for being with us.
You got it.